Hey everyone, it's Short Fiction Friday. This week I read 5 different short stories. The Soaring Dead by Simon Clarke, Heat by Lucy Taylor, Heart of the Beast by Adrian Cole, Rain Falls by Michael Marshall Smith, and Wereman by Liz Daniels. Let's start off with Simon Clarke, The Soaring Dead. This short story is about Mr. Baxter. He's a property developer. He's trying to skirt the rules. He wants to develop this land that had a plague on it. So they think deep underground maybe this disease could still exist. Of course, he's a greedy property developer. They end up digging on this site anyway, and they release the disease. And this virus is a very weird one. Something very strange ends up happening to them. Yeah, this was a fun, quick read. This is one where you enjoy seeing the characters get a bit of comeuppance. And Simon Clarke makes all the characters have such heightened emotions. Like they're all so mean. They're insulting each other. It's a very fun read. It reminded me a little bit of Richard Lehman, maybe. Yeah, this was good. The next short story I read was Heat by Lucy Taylor. Here we have an unnamed protagonist. At least I think she was unnamed. She's recounting some of her relationships. And at first, heat serves as like a metaphor, right? A metaphor for eroticism. But the protagonist takes it too far and she becomes a pyromaniac. That's how she's getting her kicks, which is very bad news for the men in her life. In terms of its place in this anthology, this is maybe the one that sticks closest to kind of the idea of the title. This might be one of the most explicit ones in the book as well. This was pretty good. The other 3 short stories I read were all from the Giant Book of Werewolves. And unfortunately, I've got to start with a less positive note. I'll talk about Adrian Cole's Heart of the Beast. So this one I didn't like. The start of it is totally fine. The setup is that some men have been murdered in this town. The citizens notice that there's a bit of a pattern here and they form a vigilante group. And of course, unknown to them, these murders are being committed by werewolves. Now, when it was a vigilante story, like these men looking for murderers or werewolves, the story was totally fine. Unfortunately, about 6 pages in, it introduces a new character and the whole story gets derailed. The dialogue with this new character is quite lame. It reminded me of some of the worst fantasy genre dialogue. You know, where characters are kind of these Machiavellian characters. To me, it always just comes off as quite lame. There's also plot elements that are started here, which are just never finished and like couldn't be finished because, you know, it's a short story. We've only got 10 pages to work with here. So with this one, I did read the introduction, the author's introduction, and he was talking about how the idea for this originally was a book. The book wasn't working, so he converted it into a short story. And it really does feel like an unfinished piece of work. It feels like, you know, chapter 3 of a long book. Like it just feels like it falls in the middle between other things. So I think the story would have been a lot better if he had chopped it down even more and then made it a much simpler story about just vigilantes looking for a werewolf. So yeah, unfortunately this one's a mess. All right, the next thing I read, also in the werewolf book, was Rain Falls by Michael Marshall Smith. This is a very simple story. Actually, the next 2 stories are both very simple and both quite good. Here we have a first-person point of view character. He's sitting in a pub. He's kind of just watching people go in and out, making comments on sort of group psychology. and kind of thinking in his mind what these people are like. As he's watching people, he notices that one group is particularly obnoxious, like they're looking for a fight. But unfortunately for them, one of the men that they pick on is a werewolf. Now, the way I describe that, it makes it maybe sound like a very pulpy story, like we're going to get a fist fight between a drunk man and a werewolf or something like that. The story is told in a much more subtle, psychological way, and it's more like the werewolf stealthily gets his victim. So yeah, this was quite a good one. Both Michael Marshall Smith's short stories I've read quite impressed me. Okay, last short story I read was Wereman by Les Daniels. This was first published in 1990 in Borderlands, edited by Thomas F. Monteleone, and it's also been published under the title By the Light of the Silvery Moon. The concept here is we basically get an inverted werewolf, right? So instead of a man that transforms into a wolf sometimes, here we get the opposite. We get a wolf that sometimes transforms into a man. What this short story really succeeds at is it makes normal, everyday human things very strange and alien, right? So like the process of becoming a human for this wolf is incredibly strange. All these regular, everyday activities to us seems incredibly weird and off-putting to the wolf. And Les Daniels describes these things in a very abstract way, but eventually, as a reader, you do work out what's happening. You work out what human things the wolf is getting used to. This was really well done and funny and bizarre. This was the best short story I read this week. Okay, and rating these short stories, potentially putting them onto my big list here, my top 20 short stories. Wereman by Les Daniels was the best thing that I read this week, and I'm going to put it at number 19. Yeah, this was really good. It makes me interested about Les Daniels' other work. I think he mostly did vampire novels. All right, let's pick some new short stories for next week. The way this works is very simple. I've got book 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. The 6-sided die selects the book. The 12-sided die selects the story within the book. Okay, first roll. One and 2. Okay, I skip over any story that has a pencil mark next to it. I've already read those in previous episodes. 1, 2. I'll be reading Game by Donald Barthelme, and that's 6 pages. I'll keep rolling the dice until I get to at least 50 pages. Second roll. Six and 3. That's Dark Love. 1, 2, 3. I'm reading Stuart Kaminsky, Hidden, and that's 19 pages. So far, I'm up to 25 pages. Third roll. 4 and 6. That's the werewolf book. Okay, there's actually only one story left in this book. It's Twilight at the Towers by Clive Barker. And that's 31 pages. That takes us up over the 50-page minimum. I'll put the 3 selected short stories up on the screen here. I'm really looking forward to that Clive Barker story. The last Clive Barker story I read was excellent, so I hope this is the same. Go read these short stories if you have access to them, and I'll be back again next week. All right, thanks for watching. See ya.